Hello there, listeners. On this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast, we're taking a look at the systems that define your self-care. Specifically, we're taking a look at how do we apply systems thinking, this idea that you're thinking about the way that one behavior affects another behavior, and it cascades in the systems of your life. How can we use that approach, which is typically applied to design and business? How do we apply that to keeping your own foundational needs met? We're also going to take a look at the way that the fluff and the stuff and influencer culture has affected the way that we think about our self-care and how you could approach your self-care from a whole new angle. This is the foundation I use with my own clients. I use it in my workshop. I teach it to my undergrads. It's powerful stuff. You won't want to miss it. Like, follow, subscribe, and let's get to it. Well, hello there, listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, wellness coach and well-being educator, Darlene Marshall, and this week I want to talk about something that easily I can get up on my soapbox about, because self-care, the phrase self-care, the ideas of self-care, hashtag self-care, man, it gets thrown around so much out there on the interwebs. Is it a massage? Is it supplements? Is it a harder workout? Is it taking a nap? Is it getting your nails done? Because it feels like, just like the word wellness has gotten bogged down and watered down and thrown around in so many ways that now it becomes meaningless, self-care a lot of times feels that way for me too. And when we think about self-care as stuff that we buy, I personally think that that is so limited and so degraded in a way that it becomes harmful. So let me tell you why, and let me give you just a little bit of a rewind on how we got here. So if we go back in the Wayback Machine and we take a look at the Google Trends data, what we see is that in 2018, the phrase self-care and the hashtag self-care just absolutely explodes. And before 2018, what we really found was self-care was talked about in two places. One is the social justice space. And maybe you've heard this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes from Audre Lorde. Quote, "Caring for myself is not an act of self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." End quote. And that, of course, refers to the idea that when you live in a society that deprioritizes you because of any reason, your race, your class, your skin color, your ethnicity, your sexual or social identities, if you live in a world that tells you that those things are wrong, prioritizing taking care of yourself isn't indulgent, it's radical. And obviously, if you know anything about me, that is going to speak to my sensibilities. So one space that was talking about self-care before 2018, before hashtag self-care, was the social justice space. The other big place that we saw conversations about self-care was in the chronic illness space. And that is where I first came to this idea that self-care was going to be important. When I was diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome back in 2007, and my physicians first said to me, maybe you should clean up how you eat and how your fitness is and your lifestyle. You probably do a lot better. And I was like, yeah, but this is about my joints. What do I have to eat have to do with my joints? And it seemed wild to me at 23, because of course I didn't understand the things I understand, and I couldn't just Google it, and it wasn't all over social media, the way that we are deeply integrated beings. And of course, the way I eat is going to affect how my joints feel, but that seemed radical to me at 23. Fast forward the tape. It's not so radical anymore. But back in 2018, hashtag self-care, we see this explosion as influencer culture just gloms onto the idea that they can sell you self-care. And that's where we start seeing all of the affiliate codes and the makeup and the shorts and the tights and the workouts and all of the different ways that the idea of self-care was sold to us. And this becomes a problem for a couple of reasons. Suddenly, all of these influencers are telling us that we need gel masks and massages and trips to Bali. And there's really two problems. So the first is just straight up classism. If you're out there telling me that the only way I can be well, the only way that I can take good care of myself is by expensive stuff that I buy online, well, what does that mean for the rest of us that can't just dump money into the influencer treadmill? So that's the first big problem. And the second big problem, the one I think is universally true, regardless of your wealth status, is going to be that influencers are out here pushing an idea of telling you that you need stuff. But what if I don't actually need that stuff? What if they're selling me smoothies and supplements and what I really need is to learn how to have a good night's sleep? Or what if they're pushing the latest fitness trend, hit workout, ballerina, bar, Pilates hybrid? And what I really am struggling with is burnout and exhaustion. And you're pushing me one more hard workout that might just push me further down the well. And how many times are we going to go out there and buy and try whatever it is they're selling, and it doesn't help before we start to wonder, well, what's wrong with me? Am I just broken? If this person that I follow, that I like, that I trust, tells me to do all this stuff, and then I don't feel any better, what's wrong with me? And in this place that we are now, that so many people are wondering from a deep part of themselves, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel better? When even the most basic stuff isn't getting covered? Yeah, I think we're in a place that it's just making a lot of us feel worse. So what I want to invite you for today's episode is to let go of some of what we've been taught about what self-care is, to let go of the idea that it's stuff we buy because someone told us on the internet to buy it. And I want to share with you some different ways to think about self-care that are evidence-based, that are deeply intuitive to most of us, and that can help you climb up out of that well, if that's where you're at. So if we let go of some of these ideas of influencer culture self-care, I think that we have an opportunity to ask some better questions. So what really is self-care? And when is care deep and meaningful and impactful in our lives? And how do we perpetuate it? Those are the ideas I want to explore with you today. And if you're watching on the live stream and you see a bunch of fidgeting and you hear a bunch of whacking noises, that is Princess just off camera trying to get comfortable because she really wants to be in my lap today. Let's start with what is really self-care. If we strip it back to its most foundational essence, I think that care is when we focus on meeting something or someone's needs. And if you think about it like you think about babies and pets, this is my favorite way to think about care as babies and pets. What do we focus on when we're taking care of babies and pets? We want to make sure they're healthy, that they're happy, that they're eating, they're sleeping, they're pooping, right? It's very simple when we look at it from babies and pets. And honestly, we're not that much more complicated than them when we really strip it down. I believe that care is taking care of something's foundational needs. And when we talk about self-care, it means taking ownership, personal responsibility for your own needs. These can be physical needs like hydration and sleep, the stuff that allows us to just survive in a material reality. This could be higher order needs like esteem. Maybe that's what makes you feel good, what makes you feel confident. What are the things that you do that are self-affirming? And it might be these really higher order needs, like the way that we contribute. How do we show up? Think about like care through service. Some of the deepest kinds of self-care I do are when I show up in service of others, because it is through caring for them that I'm actually reinforcing the care for myself. So this could take a lot of different shapes. There's lots of different ways that could show up. And it's a totally different angle of approach than what we are fed on socials. And yeah, we could make the argument that like it's less sexy, less flashy, less fun. But it is more meaningful. It is more impactful in my experience. So if you want to take it one step deeper, if you want great, transformative, impactful, life-altering self-care, the kind of self-care that allows you to show up ready to perform, ready to have an impact, fully yourself, all systems firing, then what you want to think of is your self-care as systems. We are taking systems thinking and applying it to your foundational needs as a human being. So that is your routines, your workflows, habit stacks within an hour, a day, a week, a month. So it's going to be multiple types of needs, multiple timescales, and maybe multiple ways of reinforcing. This stuff can get heady and abstract pretty fast, but I want to walk you through this idea that our self-care isn't going to be a different kind of massage, lotion, oil, additive skincare routine. It's going to be the systems that we use to keep our foundational needs met so that we can show up for the things that matter most in our lives. So let's turn it that way. How do we manage our time, our resources, our information, and our behavior in systems of self-care? Boom. That's how we level it up, in my opinion. How do you frame it in your life? What are your needs and how do you meet them and keep them met? And if you are not consistently successfully doing them, how do we evolve your systems to make it more effective? So to drive this home, to shape this in a new way, I want you to take a moment and picture what it looks like when you drop a rock into a still pond. You're going to get a ripple out from where that rock was dropped. Those are concentric circles. So you've got a tight ring in the middle and then radiating outward and outward, impacting and changing the pond. That is how I think about our needs as human beings. We all have at our core, at the center where the rock drop is, the middle of those concentric circles, we all have the literal physical needs that we have to have met in order to show up and remain effective here in our physical reality, our material reality. These are the things that your body needs to be well. That's at the core, at the center of these concentric rings. What does your body need to be well? I can't be effective at my job if I never sleep. I will not be able to show up well for the people that I love if I only eat processed sugar nonsense foods that give me a stomach ache, right? I will be less effective across the board. Having Ehlers Danlos syndrome, I can't do half the stuff I do in a given day if I don't work out consistently because my body will literally fall apart. If I feel sick, if I treat my body like a human garbage can, if I never drink water, I'm not going to be able to impact my world well. I'm not going to be able to show up and have high quality relationships, meaningful impacts to my community. Or if I do, there's going to be a shorter tail of impact on that because I'm not going to be around and be healthful and joyful and impactful as long as if I take care of that base. So we want to focus on nailing down first things first. And if we're taking a systems approach to self-care, that means nailing down the systems of keeping our physical needs met first. So if we start with nutrition, right? Think about your nutrition like a system. What are you eating? When do you go to the store? What do you get? When do you cook? What are your meal times? All of those choices can be cascading over the course of a week or a day. And when we dial in the systems around that ahead of time, we can shape the path more effectively. Or we could talk about sleep. Maybe you need to learn a bit about sleep hygiene, set your sleeping and waking times, shape your environment, figure out when you're going to cut off your caffeine intake. All of these different sleep choices dialed into a self-reinforcing system so that you're not thinking about it. We're going to talk about why all that overhead thinking can be less helpful and why we want to front load that. Fitness. Do you have the systems in place of making time, showing up, having your gear, knowing what your programming is, reinforcing that you're going to do it, sticking with it? All of that is a system, mentally, emotionally, materially. And then we get to, if we're talking about our physical needs, all of the individual variance in that. What do you uniquely need in order to physically be well? I need time outside. 100%. And I would argue that most people need time outside, just some people are less aware of the impact it has on them. But I know for me, I need time in nature daily and weekly, or I am just not right. Even if there's a blizzard outside, I'm at least going to go stand on the porch and go, wow, look at the snow. Because I need to be connected in that way. It's part of how I'm wired. So if we take this systems thinking idea, we can start looking at the different domains of our lives and dialing in the systems of self-care in a way that then becomes self-reinforcing. Then we can take on higher and higher order stuff. And conveniently, we have some very famous models that we can turn to help guide our thinking and conversation. But I want to introduce a different way of thinking about these very famous models. You probably, if you are a nerd, and I'm going to assume you are a nerd because you listen to the show, and this is a show for nerds about this stuff. So hello to my nerds. Hi, I love you. I am one of you. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, very famous model of human needs. Oft criticized. But if you don't know, Abraham Maslow was a mid-20th century psychologist who spent time with populations all over the world, specifically indigenous native populations, some in North America, and started looking at, well, what are the commonalities of all of these humans from all of these different places and spaces? A lot of it was influenced by native ways of thinking about humans and how we function in the world. Most people, when they think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they think about the very famous pyramid model. But here's a fun fact for you. Abraham Maslow never drew a pyramid. That was drawn by textbook creators trying to simplify the model for college kids. So we can think of this however we want. I personally don't like the pyramid. I think it makes it seem like, well, first off, like a video game. I'm just trying to level up the pyramid. But it also is reinforcing this very individualistic idea of people as silos, right? Like I'm going up the hierarchy of needs. It's more and more and more about me. Park it. Remember when I asked you to visualize dropping the pebble and the rings radiating out? That's actually how I think our needs work. That each of us are responsible. Let's keep our physical needs met. I'm going to take responsibility for this physical vehicle I function in the world in. But taking care of it well allows me to then have these rippling outward effects in my life because I'm able to show up with better clarity of thought and more energy and more agency and self-control. I can make better choices. I can have more resources and then build better and better and bigger impactful systems that help things be even more better. And if you know Maslow's model, or if you picture that pyramid, in the pyramid model, the top of the pyramid is to actualize. And this is like, I live up to my potential. I'm fulfilling my potential in some peak way. Maslow never drew a pyramid. And I don't think actualizing is ascending to a single peak. I think actualizing is when we ripple out into the world and have a positive impact in the ways that we can be most effective. And Maslow didn't stop at actualization. Maslow had an unpublished layer of self-transcendence And that self-transcendence is about being connected outside of ourselves. So that rippling out into the world is our impact. And it's also, just like the ripples in the pond, what bounces back to us, which is transcendence. We are part of something greater than us. So when we use Maslow in this rippling way, and we start turning toward what are the systems that keep these needs routinely met, we start with physical, but then we can work our way out. So physical needs, get those systems dialed in. But the next ripple out is safety and security. It's about stability. What are the systems where I'm taking care of myself, not just right now, but the systems of long-term care? She is snoring into the microphone. If you are hearing that snoring, snoozing sound, that is my dog Princess contributing to the podcast as a co-host should. She's getting her system need of sleep met right now and drooling on my leg. These are the things you can only get here at Better Than Fine. So safety, security, by having my physical needs met, I can then attune myself to, well, what is the stability of my financial and economic security, my social safety? Maybe it's my literal physical safety. I'm going to go off and study jujitsu as my fitness so I can take care of myself and deal with some problems if they arise. How are you building systems that keep yourself stable and safe? And then we can work our way out. Maslow's love and belonging model. What does self-care in relationship mean? Probably means boundaries. It might mean how I show up and communicate, my self-regulation to what I say, what I don't, what I'm willing to tolerate. And then there's esteem and actualization and transcendence. And when we take this systems lens and we start to see it as this rippling effect, not just as a video game I'm leveling up, but a complex web of my choices, and actualizing as having the energy, having the skills, the abilities, the systems in place where I can be giving away to my community, to the people that I care about, my gifts and my contributions. Suddenly self-care isn't about selfishness, right? It's about fortifying myself so that I can contribute. Heady stuff. So I want you to think about this less like I'm trying to cap out the video game and hit this peak of self-actualizing, and more around I'm building better and better systems so I can have greater and greater levels of impact. That's how Maslow plays into this game. All right, so I want to back up a second. We've talked about self-care as systems. We've talked about the different ways to conceive of our needs. I want to show you another angle on all of this stuff. I want to show you another thing that we can consider when we start thinking about self-care in this deeper, more meaningful, more nuanced way. And that is self-care as the decisions that we make each day, the choices that we are making to keep our needs met. And we make our decisions about our behavior through two primary systems. The first one is all of the automatic decisions that we make every day, all of our habituated behavior. We get up, we make the coffee, we drink the coffee. We're not thinking about getting up and drinking the coffee. We're getting up and we're making the coffee and drinking the coffee because we do it every day, right? That's a routine. That's a habit. It takes very few mental resources to craft that kind of system, right? Like I just go and I execute the program. So very few mental resources to do the thing that you do automatically. We all know the experience of driving somewhere that we've been a million times, and you arrive and you realize that you weren't paying attention at all the entire drive. You just did it. It's so automatic. That's one system. It does not use very many resources. The other system of decision-making is when we are making conscious decisions. It takes a lot of self-control. It takes a lot of mental resources. We are having to slow down, compare our options to all the other options. And we know that the more points of comparison you have, the harder it is to make the decision. The more points of comparison you have, the less happy you are with the outcome. This is the work of Dr. Barry Schwartz. One thing that Dr. Schwartz recommends is pre-deciding as much as possible in order to reduce your cognitive load. This is something that I do as part of my weekly higher order thinking, decision-making, planning process. If you've ever heard me talk about the dump in organization, that's what I'm talking about, is how much can I pre-decide to shape my week at a time that I'm choosing to spend that mental energy, and then I just running the program on the rest of the week. I'm building the systems ahead of time. As much as we can pre-decide, we can reduce our cognitive load. Barry Schwartz goes as far as he owns one kind of jeans. He owns multiple pairs of that one kind of jeans, but he wears that one kind of jeans and the same kind of shirt in, I think, 3 different colors, because then he does not have to decide at all, because he wants to reduce decision fatigue as much as possible. That for me is taking a little far, but you decide where your line is. So we want to reduce our cognitive load. I think we can take it one step further when we start talking about designing these systems so that all we have to do is work the plan. If self-care, taking care of our literal physical needs, is systems, and as much as we can pre-decide as possible, the better the systems are, the more that's pre-decided, the more that we can just run the program and rock and roll and reduce some of that cognitive load that so many of us are really struggling with right now. So let me take you through some examples. Let's say that you are going to make some rules of thumb about your nutrition, and you set them up as a system. So let me give you examples of what those rules of thumb could be. You set aside times for your meals. So 3 to 4 feeds a day at set times. You know exactly what those times are. You put them as recurring in your calendar so meetings don't get blocked. You generally have those framed out in the day. Then you decide you're going to have a minimum 20 grams of protein in a vegetable every time you eat. Okay. Pre-decide what those proteins and veg options are. And then in that system that we just laid out, those 2 rules of thumb, you're going to have the same 3 breakfasts. You just rotate through so that you don't get bored, and 3 menu options, like for a week, that you rotate through so you don't get bored. Basically the same ingredients so that like you can plug and play, switch some things out. And then you go grocery shopping Saturdays and Wednesdays, because those are the days that you're done with work early enough to go grocery on the way home. That's a system. And that's all pre-decided. So maybe it's Friday afternoons or Saturday mornings, you sit down, you're like, okay, this week's menu is going to be week B. We've got these 3 options for breakfast. Oh, Tuesday night, I'm going to go out to eat with my friends. Everything pre-decided. All you got to do is run the playbook. There is no like, oh, it's Thursday night and I don't know what's for dinner. What do you want? I don't know. What do you want? I guess we're getting takeout again because I don't feel like cooking. All pre-decided. So you just run the system. So one of the things that I love about this kind of system thinking is that I think that it helps us to see the way that the pieces of us are deeply integrated. They're woven together. You eat better, you exercise, you start sleeping better. Because you're running the system, you notice these other, I wasn't working on my sleep, but I'm eating better and I'm moving and now I'm sleeping better. These things are interconnected. And I think as we start to really develop these systems that keep us high functioning, we notice the ripples in our lives more and more through being consistent with the system. And sometimes is when you slip up in the system and it starts to fall back. And then you're like, oh, this is who I am in absence of this. That's wild. The other thing that I think is really neat about this stuff is it also nudges you, I think, to identify feedback loops and root causes. So feedback loops in that you start to get things humming along. You likely keep them up because you feel better, you do them more, and then you do them more so you feel better, and you get these like positive feedback loops reinforcing. The virtuous cycles is another name for that. And then root causes in that you'll try to make a system for something, and then the day will come and you won't really do it because you won't really feel like it. And then if you're really committed to this idea of systems thinking and self-care, you're going to revisit the system routinely and go, well, why didn't I do that? What was up with me that day? What was really up with me? what did I done the night before? Or who had I spent time with? Or what did I eat? What did I try? What did I do? What was my mindset? Where am I in my cycle? And you'll notice the patterns because you're paying attention, because you're trying to make the system better, because you actually care. And as you start digging a little deeper, you start to notice things. So let's say that you do want to eat better. You come up with a plan, you try to execute the plan, it doesn't work. Well, then you start to notice, oh, well, I did do that thing where my friends showed up and they had takeout and I didn't want to be rude. So I sat down with them and I ate with them instead of sticking to my plan. And then the next day I had a stomach ache. I didn't sleep as good. Oh, maybe I need to talk to the people in my life and tell them I'm trying to be healthier. Maybe I need to have better boundaries. Maybe I need to have better boundaries with myself and get clear about when am I people pleasing and why, right? Because asking yourself to commit to this process, to building these better systems and leveling up your self-care, when you fall back, if you mean it, if you're serious, you're going to start asking some of these deeper questions. And then you're going to get to those deeper root causes about what's actually going on with you. And I think it also really helps. These two other things I think it really helps. One is it's not about failing. We remove the I'm a failure, I failed from the equation because it's just about, well, now it's the system and my ability to work the system. So it's not pass fail anymore. It's iterative. How do I make a better system? How do I make a better system in me? And how do I make a better system in my environment? I also think that it helps with perfectionist thinking because now it's not about being perfect and there's only this binary of perfect and failed. I think it's just about being good enough to let the system evolve into the next step and the next step. And that when the system isn't working, we just evolve it to the next phase of your life or the next phase of your process because the system can grow as you grow. And that's what I think is also cool about this, is that we're not trying to say there's only one solution and it's going to work for the rest of your life. We're saying, well, what's the system that's going to work for you right now? And how can it show up for you? Because let me tell you, I am definitely not doing the same nutrition at 42 that I was doing at 27. I'm not doing the same workouts that I was doing at 35. My sleep is different. Like, we need different things at different times in our lives, and that's okay. Let it evolve. And then the other thing that I really love about systems thinking applied to self-care is that I think it makes you more proactive. Because you're not just reacting to whatever else is happening in your day. You're planning, you're strategizing, you're trying different things. And that lends itself to this proactive decision making so that you're shaping the path. And maybe in the beginning, it's just the next couple hours or couple days. But I'm now thinking about, well, how do I want to take care of myself when I'm 60? How do I want to take care of myself when I'm 80? Am I shaping that path as early as possible to make those automatic decisions easier and better? And I'm not saying everybody's got to live that way, but clearly I'm a nerd about this stuff because I host this show, because I have made it my life to study it and help other people apply it. So use as helpful in your life and your systems as necessary. So this self-care as systems, this is how I approach my clients. This is what I teach in my workshops. This is the guts underneath so much of this higher level work when it comes to applying wellness and well-being in your life. What does it mean to live well? Well, if we want to live well, stably for a long time, we better have good systems. Whether it's, I'm so fortunate as to have someone else cooking my food and what's the system of instruction I give them, or I am the CEO of my household and I'm running everybody's systems. What are the systems I'm putting in place to keep that rocket and rolling? And, you start looking at the different domains of your life and of your wellness, not just as a collection of habits, but as interlocking systems that you shape that help you take greater and greater care of yourself and of what you care about. And personally, professionally, I have found it so helpful in not just evolving my own behavior, but in how I see myself in my life, the way in which those ripples become integrated, more whole, and that these different things interact in a way that I become like the conductor of the orchestra of my life. Because how I eat is going to affect how I feel, how my blood sugar is, how my hormones are. That's going to affect how I show up in my relationships, how I communicate, how I am for my clients, my clarity of thought, which then is going to affect me professionally. It can be really profound and powerful stuff when we lean into the idea, when we let it evolve. And we also, earlier today, I said to a client, you hold on lovingly and let go gently, right? We don't have to be attached to every system, to every outcome. We shape it, we give it a go, we learn what we're here to learn, and then we let it evolve as it needs to through the different phases of our lives. So that's self-care if we approach it with systems thinking. I'd love to hear what you think and how you try to apply these experiments in your life. You can reach out to me. It's info at darlene.coach. You can find me on Instagram. That is also darlene.coach. My website, wait for it, is darlene.coach. And I am very easy to find on LinkedIn. If you're a fan of the show, I hope you've already subscribed. If you haven't, go ahead and do that. Like, follow, comment, leave us a review, because that helps the show to grow. And we appreciate you so much. Take good care of yourselves and be well.